Okay, I think it's 5:30, everyone. So I think it's great time to get started. Welcome to the May 2026 meeting of the Wildfire Safety Advocates here in Waikōloa Village. The big new business. I want to welcome our guest, Councilmember James Hustace, District 9 here at the county, and he's going to kick us off. He's literally the first thing on our new business. So without further ado, I'll let you go for it.
Thanks, Matt. Good to see everyone here tonight. Appreciate the time to kind of provide some updates. And Matt asked me a little bit to just focus on the budget and kind of the general plan a little bit. So I'll speak to those a little bit more so in detail, but I'll just show you some other slides that just highlight some other legislation that's kind of active or has recently been in front of council. Kind of give you some background as well here too. So once again, just kind of give perspective. We're all in District 9, and District 9 represents communities in North and South Kohala, Waimea, Waikōloa Village resort communities, and all of our North Kohala colleagues up there as well, Hawaii, Kapa'au, all that's in Pololu Valley. So just a little perspective there on District 9. These are 8 other council members. We all represent, though we're elected from these geographic regions and these drawn lines, we represent all residents across the entire island. So we all represent all residents on every community across that whole line of us.
Are the 9 districts generally equal to the population?
They are. So there are about 22,000 residents, more or less, in each one. There's a rule of thumb that we have to stay within about 5% deviation between each district, and a total of about a 10% spread. No error across 10% across the entire county. So they change and ebb and flow based upon population growth and development and how communities grow. So District 9, I still see it as a rural community for the most part. I mean, we have very pockets of community for sure, but we are spread out. Omakua, very rural area. And then as you can see, District 6 covers nearly the southern half of the island. And so 22,000 residents are spread across that entire area. So a much harder area to represent for sure, and the different needs across there. But that's kind of the demographic kind of breakdown the numbers there. But good question on that one, because it does come up every now and then. You can see those urban centers a little bit more tightly lines are drawn there. Just a little bit of insight into the county legislative process. We go through a drafting phase. We work with community members like yourselves on ideas and policy ideas to bring them forward as a bill for ordinance or as a resolution, which is a position statement that maybe not necessarily we can do at the county level, but we are asking our state partners or our federal partners or a particular agency to take on an issue and do something about it. So those are kind of the 2 modes of operation we go through. Council members are the only ones that can introduce bills and resolutions, or we can introduce them on behalf of the administration. It goes through an open process, an open hearing setting, going through committees and council readings. So a bill for ordinance has one, and its fastest path has 1 reading at committee and 2 readings at council meetings. However, there can be delays as we amend things and conversation continues, but it really goes through that process. And then of course goes to the mayor, that check and balance, and the mayor will approve or veto. And then as it goes forward, it's enacted into our code.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
That's okay.
I have a question.
Sure.
Can a veto be overridden?
It can, and I'll give you an example of that on one of the slides coming up here.
I'm sorry.
No, not a problem. I appreciate the questions. Some of the bills for ordinance actually affect our county charter. So our county charter is our establishment clause that establishes a county as a municipal entity. The code is really our rules and regulations of the county. So when I say it goes onto a general election ballot, and there will be coming up next week, there will be an opportunity for council to hear a potential proposal for a charter amendment. And a charter amendment has a lengthier time through council readings, has 1 more council reading, so 3 council readings and 1 committee reading at the least. But then it goes to the voters on a general election ballot for your final say, if it's up or down on that. Yeah, so that's an amendment for our county charter. And there have been some things, and there will be some things coming up for consideration on them. But yes, we have had an opportunity to override a veto recently. And I'll get to one here. These are just some recent legislations that vary different topics. The ones with asterisks are ones that I either co-sponsored with a fellow council member or introduced on my own. We are beholden to the sunshine law. So we hold our meetings in open session. Our meetings are agendized a week out. And any discussion about bills, active bills, have to be done in public viewing in the council chambers. But if we can always co-sponsor with one other council member to work on something, that's as far as we can go within the sunshine parameters. So those are some recent legislation. These things happened mostly last year, last calendar year, and some other ones here. I won't go through all of them if you have particular questions about this one. So the question about a veto and an override happened with Bill 127. So I co-sponsored a bill with Councilmember Kirkowitz on establishing a construction code commission. Now, this would have set up a volunteer commission filled by 7 community members with technical expertise in the built environment, with our construction and building codes, electrical codes, plumbing codes. And we, as a council, were looking for community members that had that knowledge to provide the council in the future recommendations and advice when we adopt our updated building codes. So not all the council members are savvy and have all the knowledge about building the built environment. So we were looking to people that actually had that expertise to sit on a volunteer board and provide us recommendations. It went through council, the mayor did veto it. And so we had an opportunity, the senator, it came back to us as an opportunity to override the mayor's veto. We held an override vote for the veto. And unfortunately, there weren't enough. We had to have 6 in favor of the override to have that move forward and be adopted. We did not have 6 that day, so did not go forward. So the veto held in that instance. I'll just talk. Bill 128 went through council. This is what we'll be talking about as it relates to the budget. So I'll talk about the budget in a little bit, but we do establish and propose and amend our real property tax classes. And this was to establish an entirely new tax class in our 3rd tier residential. So our residential class has 2 at the moment. The breaking point is about a valuation of $2 million for a property. So under 2 million and over 2 million. The 3rd tier establishes another breaking point at 4 million. So 4 million and above. So we'll be discussing a rate for that starting next week. Just a couple of other ones that have been that have moved through. Some of these 152 is still active. Actually, this is supporting our county auditor. So our county auditor sits under the auspice or the guise of the legislative branch. So as council, the auditor is really employed by us, and we hired a new county auditor recently. And this active bill would give them an opportunity to have a deputy within their department to help with kind of the longevity of the departments and supports to really, it's another aspect we have as council to really look, inquisitively into the other administrative departments and make sure we're spending taxpayers' dollars appropriately. Departments are running the way they should be, that are functioning appropriately. So that's really to support that office today. Some other active pieces, and I'll talk about Bill 66. This is the general plan. We've been talking about this one for a while, and I'll go back to this in a moment. These are some other active ones. Resolutions 518, 544, 545. We have to, every now and then, we reassess our council rules, how we hold and conduct meetings, attend meetings. PIGs are permitted interaction groups. We've been calling them ad hoc committees in the past, and we're trying to be in more alignment with our other boards and commissions. So sometimes we're a little slow on uptake about what our rules should look like. Also disclosure as it relates to financial conflicts or any conflicts about how we act in meetings. So these are some other active ones too. Bill 148 is one for Waimea future park in the Waimea space levy park. So Bill 66 is this right here. This is our general plan. And it's a long-range planning document for the county, really looking at the next 20+ years about how we see community, where we see community growing, the needs to match those, and other policies that are definitely related to that. As half of that is a mapping component, and which I've spent more time kind of investing in looking at the map side of it. So there are some maps in the back of this, very high level overview maps. But it's a lengthy document over 300 pages that talks about sustainability, climate policy actions, how we adapt to those sort of changing environment, how we see growth, where the needs are, and how do we address those really at a high level overview of long-range policy. We went through a long timeline of this for the general plan. This initiated back in 2015 and has been delayed for a number of reasons, from volcanic eruptions to the pandemic. And it finally came to a point where the council had to take it up. And last fall, we went through all the chapters with the planning department and community, heard a lot of testimony on different pieces. And it got us to a point where we have a number of amendments for this in particular. The challenge we have is that the existing general plan, the 2005 general plan, which a lot of our policies are based off of now, definitely dated. A lot has changed and happened in our communities since 2005. But there are rules in the 2005 plan that kind of limit our authority on how we can amend this document. So there's a little bit of a conflict on our authority as council members, as legislators, as well as, and then what the 2005 plan kind of lays out. So we're kind of struggling a little bit there about how far we can amend it. We do have some maybe more non-substantial amendments that could make their way through. And I proposed some in regards to the maps, about just some errors and omissions that I see in the maps. There are some other ones that may be more substantial. So that adds another layer to the complexity of sending it back to the planning commissions so that they can review the process and then send it back up to us. So it's a little bit of game of tag for some of that there. But it's a very active conversation. It was in committee 2 weeks ago. It passed out of committee. I voted, just to be clear and transparent with you, I voted against moving out of committee. I didn't think it was ready to move forward because as I mentioned, I saw some issues with the maps. There were other active amendments for consideration that we didn't really go into depth with. Councilmember Kirkowitz, one of our Puna council members, she proposed a very large, substantial amendment to this one. And I think there's a space between the two, but it does strip out a lot of our climate action policies that are kind of laid out in here that the community has kind of built in for quite some time now through a lot of community meetings and public sessions. But there's definitely more conversation to have about it. So now we'll move to council this coming week. There'll be for the first reading in council on Wednesday. So it'll be a good opportunity to testify on it, on this long range planning document with regards to growth in communities, how to match those needs, how we see infrastructure and developments, the land use patterns. A lot of those kind of are really laid out in this document, and they're not supposed to be so specific necessarily, but would affect communities across the entire island in all communities. So very broad speaking policies that we can then pull from within each of our communities. So we have active community development plan action committees, and they were set up following the 2005 adoption of the 2005 plan, excuse me, to then be more specific on regional basis about what you see across the South Mahalo region, North Mahalo, Kona, Hamakua, all those different areas. And those are supposed to kind of drill down a little bit further in goals and priorities within those communities. So that's kind of the trajectory and progress of this right now, but it is a very active piece of legislation in front of council. The other piece that's very active right now that Matt wanted me to speak to a little bit was the budget, the county budget. And this is, of course, that once again, that check and balance. The mayor proposes a budget and it's for council to amend, adopt, change, those sort of things. So we're that other piece of that puzzle when it comes before us, and another public review of the budget too. So it comes before us in these community meetings, and it comes before us in committee meetings and in council. We had a number of hearings in April to really sit down with the 22 administrative departments that we have oversight over. To really look at each of the departmental budgets, line by like line item for some of them, but what they're proposing, what they're requesting, what their needs are. And it presents us, you know, this is these numbers up here. So active bills, Bill 135 and 136 are the two pieces of the budget. So there's the operating budget, part one, and then the capital budget, part two. So the operating budget is everything from our salaries and wages to maintenance of regular maintenance of facilities, to our pension plans, our services, our debt service, the debt we owe that we've invested in projects over time. And then the capital budget is another piece of it. It's that those one-time investments into facilities, into infrastructure, overhaul, major maintenance on facilities. And they're kind of go hand in hand for the most part. I mean, we have to watch what our investments are because they do affect our operating budget in the long haul. So the operating budget, these numbers were updated just recently. The mayor just shared with his draft 2 of the budget. So 975 million in the operating budget and 375 in the capital budget. The capital budget, that figure represents about 44 capital projects. They're all funded in different parts through bond allocation, partnership with our state partners, investment in different kind of sectors to kind of fund those projects. But we often take debt to see those projects through, and that's where we kind of pay out in our operating budget for sure. Just to give you a perspective, the operating budget, you know, we're definitely approaching that $1 billion mark, and we'll probably see that in the coming years, I would imagine. But this is about a 2.4% increase over last fiscal year's operating budget. So a slight increase there on that budget side. Give you some perspective on the CIP. So the CIP, the capital improvement plan, a capital project list. These are island-wide projects. So this is kind of just a snapshot of what some of these investments look like. Biggest one on the top is our wastewater facilities, repair and replacement of those, transfer stations, ADA compliance, and you can see the list down there. The one that stands out probably the most, you probably seen in the paper, is the Waikōloa Bridge, or the Coconut Island Bridge. This was proposed at about $20 million for a bridge that's failed, unfortunately. Good news on that, for the most part, is that it got shifted away from the Department of Parks and Recreation to the Department of Public Works, where they actually have the bridge inspectors and the proper services to inspect and maintain and build bridges. Parks and Rec gave us a figure about 20 million. DPW, Public Works, give us a figure about 8 million. So there's a big shift in those dollar amounts about what Parks and Rec proposed versus what DPW says they can move forward on the project with. So kind of a stark contrast, which will probably raise some questions next week at our budget meeting on Thursday.
Will that be reflected in the budget? Will it be updated? Or
yeah, so the capital budget in the draft 2 is reflected as such. Yeah. And my understanding is that the 20 million also included repair and maintenance to some structures on the island itself, but it didn't really reflect that in the capital budget. So it will probably raise some questions. I'll probably at least have a question on it about that shift and where the figures from 20 million came from versus 8 and how we got to two different figures. So kind of interesting there for sure. Yeah, so just kind of a perspective on those. One specifically for District 9, so our North and South Poland communities. In the capital budget, we have, and this has changed a little bit. So the Spencer County Shooting District Park, Community Center and Shelter. This is, we'll probably see this in the paper coming out soon to do a little highlight on this one. But definitely working in concert with Senator Richards on this and Representative Tarnas for some state support, county support, and then community support, kind of like a three-way split on the entire cost of that facility. So an evacuation, an emergency shelter for the purposes that we see across District 9. I mean, we all witnessed the different experiences through wildland fires in the community and the support we need across community sectors, as well as the tsunami event, where a lot of people from the resort community were coming up to Waikōloa, coming up to Waimea. So we're trying to house and receive and support people that are without any goods and services. So That's moving forward, some good promise there. The emergency generator replacement, this was on the CIP, got cut out because it was actually appropriated last year. So what happens for appropriations in the capital budget? They are appropriated 1 year, and if nothing changes in the conditions or they're not fulfilled, they do fall off the appropriation list after 3 years. So the South Mahalo Fire Station one was appropriated last year, but for some reason, when I raised this with in our budget hearings a couple weeks ago, well, why it was still on the list as was it a new appropriation? And they said, oh, it was just an error, so they pulled it off of the list. And because it's still active in our capital list. Some other renovations to some affordable housing along Waihai Road. The Kamapua Nui Mini Loop Road, I can talk about that in a little bit here, but that's active in the CIP for infrastructure for that housing development at the end of Kamapua there. And then also some civil defense replacement of equipment for communication purposes when it comes to disaster preparedness. So looking at kind of taking a step back, you know, in April, we had 4 days, sat down with 22 departments, looked at each of their departmental budgets, asked them a series of questions, some harder questions to answer for departments on how they're filling positions, their staffing needs, their issues and challenges, how successful some of the programs are being implemented. So that was a full 4 days of engaging with the departments, going through all the different budgets and things. Following that, the mayor did update his draft budget, the draft 2, which is this blue one right here I have in front of me. And so that'll be reflected in our public documents as well. Part of this conversation that we go into next week, so we have the committee on Tuesday, council day on Wednesday, and we'll have a special budget council meeting on Thursday. And part of that consideration we're talking about are real property tax rates. And these are the two that have to be adopted. Some figure has to be adopted for them because they did not exist in the budget last year. So long-term rental tax class, and then the residential, these are those non-homeowner occupied homes. So those third tier valued over $4 million, or someone does not call that as their primary residence. So we'll be kind of discussing rates for those next week, Thursday. However, on Tuesday, there are public hearings for the budget in the evening, starting at 5 o'clock. There's a 5 o'clock meeting, is a public hearing where you can testify. There'll be no business discussed, it's just an opportunity for a community to testify on the budget and provide their thoughts. 5 p.m. is for the budget itself. And then 5:30, starting at 5:30, will be for the real property tax rates. And you may have seen in the paper that there was some proposals out there. They're kind of just a range of rates that could be adopted. And we haven't yet seen what those rates are. Some of the council members are starting to file what they want to see some of the other rates are for those different tax classifications. So that will be kind of proposed and be available for the public to start seeing any day now. And then you can testify also on Thursday before council as we come up with the budget then. And then just a bigger picture, this is kind of that timeline we went through for the budget where we got the mayor's draft back in February, we held departmental hearings, mayor's second draft public hearings. So next Thursday will be that first reading of the budget, and then moving into June, our second and final reading of the budget. We have to adopt, those are just deadlines of when we have to adopt the rates, and then when we have to adopt operating and capital budget. So the end of that fiscal year, those things kind of have to line up. And then we both on the 21st of May and the 4th of June will be opportunities to amend the budget. So there will be definitely proposals to amend the budget. And I'll talk about a couple of those in a moment that are on my radar. One thing that and I've shared this with the group before, one thing that we are facing as a county at large is our investment in our wastewater projects. Hilo, Kona, Mahalo, so across the south of the island, we are investing substantial dollars, upwards of $1 billion over the next 10 years, figure that we've never really seen investments into the county, particularly in these sectors for wastewater. But it will add a lot to our debt. And as your representative for District 9, these projects don't directly benefit the residents in District 9. I recognize that there's things we legally have to do. And the investment we need to make into our environmental systems and how we care for the INA and the ocean. But at the same time, these are not really impacting and helping our residents across District 9. So I take that, not lightly. And the orange line on the bottom is our kind of our typical investment in capital projects every year. It's about 50 million we invest in capital projects. But we are hit with this other figure where we're legally mandated to improve and update some of these old systems that should have been done a long time ago, even before Senator was on the council. It probably should have been addressed in some capacity. So it's kind of, we're getting the bill due on a lot of these projects all at the same time.
So can you back up real quick? The $50 million line,
Yeah.
Is that just estimate, approximate forever and ever? They're just
It's kind of been an average for what's been typically invested in other projects, other capital projects.
Okay, so of the $50 million, previously it was $28 million are dedicated to bridge to the Coconut Island, Mokololo. Is that accurate?
Yeah, and well, those might be more, that might be seen as kind of two separate things. So that's the 8 million for, like, as an example, for Coconut Island is really an appropriation. It may not be the issuance and spend of the 50. I see. So it could just be that ask for the 8, but it may not factor in right away. It could factor in a couple of years of that $50 million average. And it really depends on how far the administration wants to spend into the capital realm, if they want to push higher or lower in that space. And I do worry that it could, with this hump we're seeing, right, that it could affect our investment into other capital projects. Like, do we have some give and take with it? And I do worry about that. And then do we worry about do we neglect other projects, right? Or not invest in other projects that the community's seeing? So that's my worry there for sure.
So are these estimates of the cost of projects that are being proposed? Or are these the actual dollar amounts that will be allocated in the budgets for a given calendar year towards that project? In other words, is this the total cost of the wastewater treatment plants that would be approved in 27, 28? Which then gets spent over the 20-year time horizon based on
Bond issuance.
bond.
Yeah. So take, for example, like the Hilo wastewater one, there are multiple phases for the project. And so at different points, there'll be an investment to do the second phase of it. So it's kind of like they're trying to spread out some of the costs. Finance department's trying to spread out some of the costs, so we're not paying the huge lump sum all at once. So it's being spread out over a few years here. And they're trying to see if they can spread out that debt over longer for sure. So they're definitely trying to work on that. But it is, these are just estimates for those investments, for those different phases over a couple of years.
So these are numbers that would assume all the money is paid out in the year that
Correct.
the project.
Yeah.
Approved in the project,
Yeah.
rather than the bond cost.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Because that we would take on that, maybe we would take on that bond for $300 million. And we would issue that cost and that consideration that year, but then we would pay out that debt for long term. Yeah, so it's definitely going to be, some of these projects are phased, like the Kalaka'i one. There's going to be some phasing for that one. Like when it says other, that's like the Kalaka'i wastewater, that's the Mahalo, but the biggest one we see right here is the Hilo wastewater one, and the investment has to be made into that facility. But there are multiple phases for that one. They wouldn't be exact figures because don't necessarily want to show a cost estimate for those that may want to bid on the projects down the line. Because of course, you always, the rule is that those would go for the lowest bidder on those projects, right? So this is what the target, this is what's laid out in that bid packet. And then you want those businesses, those consultants, those contractors to try and get through that project under like a lesser amount, so that we're not carrying more debt, right? That they can get it done or a bit cheap, you know. It has pros and cons, right? But we have, it saves the taxpayer, it saves the county money if we can get the project done cheaper and on the same timeline that we projected. But you can always worry that the product isn't up to par, and someone said they would pay $100 million more, right? So that's some consideration to take in.
But of course, with inflation at 4%.
Yeah.
But of course, in 10 years, the cost of the project goes up like that.
Yeah, exactly. And so I did ask that question to our finance director about where have we seen the range in interest rates for our bonds. And you know, back in 2020, we saw an interest at about 2.5%. So that was the lowest we had seen in a while. About a year or two ago, it was about 4.5%. She said it's gone up as high over 5%. And right now, they haven't issued any bonds recently. So about 6 months ago, their percentage was 4%. Yeah, so that's what you're saying. Yeah, but they haven't gone out to issue any bonds recently. So they don't have an accurate figure at the moment. So as soon as they start issuing bonds, then they can start
talking about interest rates.
Yeah.
Talking about inflation.
Well, that's absolutely.
That's the actual cost.
Absolutely, and that's something to consider too. I mean, with global politics, national politics, you know, they're also going to change costs for products and how things are being shipped here, transported here, and our relationship with outside producers, all those sort of things that we're having to bring things here that we cannot manufacture ourselves. And so that the whole global market is kind of an upheaval. So that definitely is going to play an effect beyond some of that as well too, and all the inflation. Yeah. So a lot of things to consider for sure. Yeah. So kind of looking at the budget from my perspective a little bit, I have a number of priorities, and I wanted to update the group on some of these here that I have newer information on. I was looking at the budget, and I've had this conversation in community about our fire department, particularly here in Waikōloa Village. So Waikōloa Village, at the moment, at our fire station, you do not have a fire captain. Okay, so you are basically down one individual, and it's been this way for a long time. And basically, you're shorthanded. There's one individual that's kind of double duty. They do they're the operator of the vehicle, and then they also have to take on the responsibility of kind of the command incident. They kind of relay information and demands and requests to their colleagues out in the field. So knowing that and talking to our battalion chief here, Troy Gibson, they rotate battalion chiefs in and out of the station. And if there ever was an incident and the battalion chief was on duty, he would jump in the truck and be the lead commander of those situations. So talking to him, talking to the fire department, talking with finance department, I've been pushing for the last year to add that captain position to Waikōloa. And with the draft 2 budget, that position is in there. So there's now in the draft 2, it hasn't been adopted, but with pushing administration and making that request, you would, and if we adopt the budget it is now, you would have a captain's position in for the Waikōloa Fire Station. So I see that as a big win for the community, you know, particularly in what you deal with in this, you know, with our wildland fires or rangeland fires and the risks you have here. That's critical to have the full cadre of and staffing there at that fire station. So I think it's a major success there for the fire department and at least having the staffing capacity. Definitely more to do, and that's just I think it's a good step in the right direction for the fire station here. The technology piece is also in the budget, and that was I've been requesting with the department and administration to fund the Pulse Point application. And maybe you've used this or are familiar with it, but it's kind of an outreach into community that shows where accidents, incidents, issues are going on our highways or in community. It's kind of a distilled synopsis of what's happening in some of the radio traffic. And that was supported through our hospitals, and then the administration in the past took it on. The funding, the subscription did lapse, so I wanted to make sure that it's back in there and that the department is taking it back on. So that should be activated at some point following the budget adoption too. So I'll keep working and making sure that's active piece in there. Some other things, not necessarily related to wildfire safety, but looking at our West Hawaii immigrations, there's some funds and money to provide a consultant to support immigration's efforts in West Hawaii. So I want to just make sure that stays in there or increase the capacity there. What we're dealing with kind of at a national level too in our immigrant workforce, all that sort of support. Early child education opportunities. This is rather new. There's been some challenges with federal dollars coming to being slashed for some early child education programs, particularly Native Hawaiian programs, Tutu and Me specifically. So trying to see how we can address that in the budget. So thinking about that. I will also be proposing 3 amendments into the capital budget. One is to reappropriate the Waikōloa Gymnasium. So this is actually fallen off the list. The request was for 200,000. That's not enough. So I'm going to be putting in a bit more for planning and design of a Waikōloa Gymnasium / multi-purpose facility. Site to be determined, but there are some opportunities in the Kamakua area and kind of how make a nexus in that space with the state library, the park, all that sort of space there. And I think you all know the benefit of a gymnasium and a multi-purpose facility as not just beyond a community meeting space, recreation and community, but as a potential evacuation or shelter during emergencies. So could double as that for sure. Other ones on my mind, Lindsay Road Extension is a Waimea Road project that's been in the CDP like other projects for a long time. So trying to work with the private landowner on that one. And then Banyan Tree Park is a park space, actually a pump project in North Mahalo, but could be seen in different ways. And then the last one there is just a note on the Department of Environmental Management. In our 4 days of budget hearings, one of those days with the Department of Environmental Management, I saw in a space within the budget that could be trimmed and cleaned up a little bit, particularly with this department. They have there's a need for the staffing, but they have a lot of vacancies in their department. And with the investment in our wastewater projects coming forward, there needs to be some of those positions. At the same time, they have not been filling some of those vacancies at the rate they should be. So I do see it as a place that we could trim a little bit and direct towards capital budgets. So kind of looking at that as a little bit about investing in some of the capital projects that are sitting on the list while paying some of our debt. So there's some ideas I'm floating about that with the finance department right now about how do we trim this down a little bit. It's a hard department. I mean, it's something that we're actively needing, investment in wastewater, solid waste, but they are definitely struggling, and we are kind of propping them up a little bit. And they kind of not using all the funds that have been allocated to them. So trying to see that as an avenue of where we can reinvest in other parts of the county. I won't go through all of these specifically, but these are some of the things that are also on my plate on the horizon for me. The Aina Kapuna dedication, this is all talking about affordability and generational housing. Actively looking at chapter 11, which is our trigger within our county code on affordable housing when development happens. How many affordable projects also are tied to that? So we're looking at that and updating that. I know there's some changes at the state level about requirements from developers. So we have to kind of match that a little bit more after some changes at the state side. As I mentioned, the general plan, still working with Councilmember Kimball on some wildfire mitigation legislation and have taken some input from this group here on what direction we should go. So I do appreciate that input. And as I kind of move through some other bills in the budget here period, that will be my focus on wildfire mitigation legislation into the summer. Also have some POC assessment legislation and then other support for local nonprofits. So I'll kind of leave it there. Spoke at you for quite a while, so I appreciate the time with you. I also want to give some time to Senator Richards. I know he's probably got some insight into things as well. I mean, I can take any questions that you might have too. Thank you.
Thanks for coming, Senator Richards. Do you have anything you want to say, or you just want to views? Yeah, yeah. Space right here for you.
Great for me because, so it's actually review. Some of the stuff that he's been working on for all of us. And some of the stuff a little frustrating because the same stuff I was working on, especially the wastewater. And I'm glad it's finally coming to that fruition of getting some of this stuff taken care of, but problem is the big cost. And at one point, James, I don't know if you talked about this, was I think we estimated $2 billion to get everything addressed.
Yeah, definitely $1 billion over the next 10 years, but then that doesn't even answer the question about the Puna region and that community, which is another substantial investment.
And in our county, the worst ones were the Aliki Drive, Waikōloa area, but also Hilo Town. Because Hilo Town is in the aquifer, and many of those are on cesspool, not on the wastewater system. So that's a big challenge for the county. And the biggest problem with our county is it's big. You know, we have the 50,000 cesspools. So at least we're taking steps in the right direction to get that. For all these consent decrees, at least we're working in the right direction. So I do appreciate that. When I first joined council, the annual budget was a little under 600 million. Now we're bumping up on $1 billion. And we collectively spend the least just because we don't have, I mean, per person, just because our size of our county is so big. So I don't know if there's questions. I thought we were talking about wildfire, but I think there's always things we talk about.
And some of these are definitely related into how we invest in the capital projects for sure.
Yeah.
Where that's why I kind of want to share like this overview of the budget, and I appreciate the latitude a little bit and providing some bigger, broader picture on some of these things.
And one thing that James and I, aside from the fact that we're colleagues, also friends, when we talk story probably at least once or twice a week, just catching up, and the coordination we have between the federal, state, and county, and that continuum is actually quite helpful for all of us, because there are some things that people think are one jurisdiction, it's actually a different one, but we all talk story all the time. So yeah, we just got done with session. I look tired because I am. I tell you, I have not been through anything like that before. And I think we pulled a couple of rabbits out of the hat at the end of the session, ready to get some things done. Last year, Senate President gave us an I for incomplete grade system. This year, he gave us an A+ because he said, you know, we're actually able to do things. And talking about the funding there, trying to backfill some of the federal cuts has been really hard. For instance, you mentioned 228. The way we try to help with that one is there's $55 million in a fund that is destined for OHA, and if you go into that conversation you want, but anyways, it's an overage of collections and an underage of payment to OHA over time. In a way, we're able to move $55 million from there to OHA to specifically backfill the federal cuts. 228 is one of them. We're not going to get it all because there's over $100 million cut, but we were able to do something like that. And we're, again, by Constitution, we have to have a balanced budget, and we do. And a lot of our funding, well, the way the Senate approached it was the unfilled positions that have been unfilled for 5 years that were cut, and that frees up a whole bunch of cash going forward. So that was part of it. We also maintained the tax structure, the tax cut structure coming forward. And we left the tax cut, income tax cuts in place for the 90% of the population, the top 10%. They lost some of their tax cuts. So what James was talking about, the real estate, the $2 million threshold that was put in place when I was in council. And I have to give credit because most of the population that was in that second tier were very receptive on it. They recognize, you do better than most people and you're willing to pay that. So from my perspective at the time, it was actually quite well received.
Was there a lot of pushback to the tier 3 and the 4 million?
Yeah, I had some calls, I mean, it had to be careful a little bit because it is, sometimes those individuals are not residents here.
Yeah.
So they're not active voters here, so that's something to consider. But we are seeing homes that are selling for $48 million. In that range, so I mean, there is that, it's worthy to have that conversation, I mean, we've had. Cherry Nava said, well, why don't we just bump the tier 2 up higher? I did, and that could be an answer. But I think having the ladder and that tiered approach may be more of a solution, because there are some people that are closer to the $2 million, that if you put them in the same class with someone that's like a $15 to $20 million home, their valuations are all kind of out of whack there, it's yeah, so something to consider there for sure. Yeah, I had a couple of calls from people like, hey, I have a second or third home here. It's like, well, you're welcome to declare this as your primary residence, because then you have the lowest rate as a homeowner. But that's a choice that some people have, and I recognize that for sure. But we are being hit with these big bills, so we have to find some sort of balance involved for sure. Yeah. And then kind of create a kind of a progressive structure within our taxes too. And at the valuations of homes is also something we have to consider too, because that we're seeing that fluctuation as well.
Those were things that the state, one of the things was as we're looking for sources of revenue. One question was, should the state tap into the real property tax? And the guys that came from county, I have a lot of colleagues in the Senate that came from county, all said, no, you don't touch that. That is county. And if you want to restructure the whole tax thing, maybe we can talk about that, but we need real property to county, because that's what it should. And so it was kind of interesting to see. You could tell who was former county council members. Yes, they were. No.
Well, we're really grateful for you both to be here, and I think the first topic on our agenda, we just would love any input and any insight you guys have, but we wanted to kick it off with the mayor's announcement of the Waikōloa emergency egress route, the second evacuation route coming to the north end of the village. And I think next week is the 2-year anniversary of the groundbreaking. The last administration.
Yeah. So this is kind of the map from the state on that route designated by Department of Transportation. So working with those private landowners, kind of mapping out where that emergency, it's called the WEER, so the Waikōloa Emergency Evacuation Route or something like that. But yeah, I think I'm close there, right?
I think you're right.
Okay.
I think you're right. I think I was wrong.
No, that's okay. No, I
I'm just gonna take a moment here and explain the map, because most people can't make sense out of these maps. This is Paniolo. So, the entrance to the village is down here. This is Kamakoa Drive. This is the amount that's already been paved. This is the skate park. This is where the new library will be. Then this is now the gravel road out to the wastewater treatment plant, which is over here. This is the new cut that the state has made in the last 6 months.
That exists.
That is a 2-lane gravel surface. It is not paved. It's only been graded. And then between here and here is a gap that needs to be filled. And this piece, which is now gravel, has to be surface. So that gives you a reference point. So
And the lower part, the Mackay part also needs to be surfaced to the same level as Hulu. It's just
yes, all of that.
So, and then I'll just share that kind of land ownership a little bit too. This section here, this is county land, county owned land, right? We just saw dedication and opening of Mahalo and the workforce housing project here. This is all county land, and you'll see parcels because there was a master plan years ago, back in 2012, to kind of imagine what this development space would look like for other housing and school sites too. So there are some spots that are designated for future potential DOE opportunities. And this space in here, Waikōloa Village, the Waikōloa Lands, Waikōloa Village Association coordinates all that. And then the private landowners on this side here, Waikōloa Heights and the Manakai development happening right here.
I think we had a question.
Yes.
Where does it come out? The road now.
The Queen K, you can actually
Yes.
see it. It's about 3/4 of a mile south of the Puako turnoff. So if you're driving north on the Queen K, it's on the right on the Malka side, and it's literally there's a gate and it looks like a driveway, and then you can see the grading up. It's right before the Kamakoa Gulch. Hulu is hard to see unless you're really looking for it because it's behind a little ridge right there, and it's much easier to see if you're driving south. You almost can't see it at all if you're driving.
And it's right close to mile marker 71. And Hulu actually is right next to mile marker.
And I did speak to Ed Sniff and the Director of Transportation on their way down, so it's fresh.
Excellent.
He is committed, DOT is committed to finish the grading and putting the chip seal on that. They're delayed because of the corner low, they're working so hard to fix them so much broken. But he's definitely committed to getting that done. And so they didn't give you a timeline. Just knowing the way Ed works, I'm gonna say calendar year 26, they'll probably have it accomplished by.
When you say he's gonna chip seal, how much of that would be chip sealed?
The whole thing.
The whole road.
Well, not the county portion, the whole new part that the state has taken. The whole new part that from the wastewater treatment plant down here that the state already cut, they are gonna finish it off.
Yeah.
Is what we say.
So we still have the gap between the two roads.
Yes.
We still have what you're describing is a road of various capability and condition. And it's not entirely clear to me, given some of the mayor's comments on multiple occasions, who is actually going to maintain this road. If we eventually cobble all the pieces together. So James, I'd love to hear and sure, I'd love to hear from you in terms of how some of those key issues are going to be addressed.
So let me jump in first. This is a county road and the state's coming in to help get it stand up. So my expectation is council will lead maintenance on the road. That gap in there, how long is it, what the distance is, the distance of that?
Few hundred feet. It's really not super long, but the problem is it goes right past the wastewater treatment plant, and they have like a leach field or something right next to there. There's definitely some activity going on when it connects right by the wastewater treatment plant, and I don't know what level of coordination has happened there.
Because I think James and I can work together and one thing about our Department of Transportation, SNF, is really good at finding federal money that other states couldn't get to. And so he has shovel-ready programs set to go like that. So if you give me a length and how much else, I'll work with James, see if we can maybe get that taken care of.
And Senator, I appreciate your expectation. County, but the mayor ended his annual address just a few weeks ago. Disclaiming any responsibility, said it was the state and private landlord's responsibility to do this, that he would not maintain it unless he was indemnified of any responsibility or liability. And indemnified any liability, but I'm not sure who's supposed to provide that indemnification. Okay, so you can see it online. Okay, you can ask the mayor. I'm sure they'll be happy to repeat or show you the video of making a mistake.
I'm going to politely disagree with the mayor. Because we are governing. We are governing, and somebody, I've had this conversation concerning the Waikōloa Dam on the Oahu. And there are agencies that, well, we want to be involved with it. I said, if not us, who?
Yeah.
I mean, we are the ones that are supposed to get in there and get it done. And so, I mean, there's an easy way not to have any liability with that road. Let's just not build it.
Yeah. But then there's liability for whatever happens on the back end for it not being there, right? So like,
I'm more known for asking forgiveness than permission. Let's just get it done.
Well, there's also the question of the permanent road. And that permanent road is basically drawn along that same alignment in the plan that was adopted by the county council, maybe when you were on council, as part of the Waikōloa Heights community development. So that is a county plan. It is not a state plan. The county is responsible for implementing the plan, its own plan. And we have $2.5 million in last year's budget to actually complete all the design work. Because what's the missing piece here is the grading and the drainage flows. And what's being cut here doesn't account for where the drainage actually needs all of it. And that's not that. We just have a rough.
Yeah.
In the dirt.
It's not meant to be a full-on egress.
no, not yet, not yet. No, we know that.
But that's the
but-
question. How do we move beyond this and get a permanent road?
Yeah.
And what is really most critical for us, which is testimony we gave at council last month, was the plan that the county has for workforce housing and on high will add 3,000 people to this village. And those, bumping us, the population up from 7,000 to 10,000. When we already don't have enough capacity to evacuate and fire, it's just going to make the odds of people dying in fire that much greater, is behind on spades. And so moving ahead with the housing without the road access built is, we're essentially writing the death sentence for some people. And that's what's happening.
Part of what the community is facing is these entitlements of these developments were granted 25 years ago, 30 years ago, and they are what they are.
Well, the county is the biggest part of this new development.
I don't, well, yeah, this outside.
Yeah, the common part of it.
And there is a way to build the road. We looked at it when I was in the county. You make it an improvement district and you fund it through bonding. But it increases your real property taxes here in the community for the next 20 years or so. We looked at that as a possibility. The community didn't like that.
I think that might change now. I think the community might be on board with that.
Well, paradoxically, if you have that many more residents,
Yeah.
the fiscal
It goes lower.
impact gets diluted out. So
And-
and that may be a possibility.
Speaking of CFDs, I meant to ask this earlier.
Sure.
We've heard a rumor that Waikōloa Heights is going to apply for a CFD for their internal area.
Yeah.
Is that a thing that is on the docket? And do you know anything about when that will be coming?
No, because they're still having that conversation with finance department and negotiating. So the CFD, Community Facilities District is it's a tax, it's a TIF. It's basically, I forget the acronym, but it's a tax program basically to charge those homeowners to pay for the infrastructure. And a CFD basically ties it to their deed. So it runs with the land that they have to pay for those infrastructure improvements that's mapped out in the development. It could be, we've seen not many across the state. We have one active one in the Kona area specifically for wastewater, but it can involve wastewater, roads, utilities, parks, those sort of things. So the developer is working with the finance departments to go and the administration to work on the CFD. I don't know what it's gonna look like when it comes to council. There could be different changes in there, and they are based on their planned unit development from many years ago. They have an obligation to do road infrastructure, either the widening of Paniolo, an extension of Paniolo out deep into their property. So widen it from Ho'oko and all the way into their property and widening it to that and extending it. Or an arterial road. So they both carry different price tags. And you can imagine as a private developer, what they're gonna take. And I've talked about the community about this, you know. If you're that individual, you'd probably take the lesser of the two, right? So that's something that the community needs to prepare for, what they're gonna propose in that space. Cause they have an either or obligation, it's not that they're tied to one or the other. But I'm having corporation counsel or attorneys look at if there's any sort of discussion that's been had. But it seems as it's only been just a reading exactly of what is in that, it's just like a plain reading, there was no like that they have to do one or the other, it's. That one over the other, it's just an or, the or clause really holds. Yeah.
And it's that time now. When you're talking to some people on the road, the room have read those agreements in multiple times.
Yeah, oh yeah.
There's no date certain that anything is.
That's correct. That's correct, unless, you know, basically that CFD. Provides them an opportunity to issue a bond. Early on in the process, and so they have the finances to develop the infrastructure as they see fit. And then as the lots are owned, they kind of. They start paying for those things.
I apologize, but is that infrastructure for not about development, or is it infrastructure related to either Waikōloa Heights or the third building run down? It's only for on-site within the community.
And whatever the condition is laid out on the PUD, to my understanding too, so that the obligation about. That arterial road or the widening of Paniolo still holds. And probably would be within that package of the CFD. To pay for the costs of the infrastructure.
Well, we'll be keeping an eye out for that, obviously, and.
Yeah, it's something to be that the community is gonna be aware about, and I'll probably get a lot of. Inquiries and heat on it, because that's something that's gonna come, and it's gonna impact the community here. But it is a mechanism, that financing mechanism. That developers do to cover these large costs as they kind of sell parcels and pay those debts off over the long time.
And to be clear, we've done real rough back of the envelope
Yeah.
numbers, like just making stuff up
Sure.
that shows that like the community could pay less than $100 a year to pay for the road.
Oh,
Like,
if you did what,
No.
was that
No.
the $20 million at 100 million, right? With contributions from the county and the developers, right? Didn't we do that? Am I making these numbers up or am I doing it wrong?
Making those up.
Okay, I'm making those numbers up.
The numbers, if the whole project costs were assigned to our taxes,
Yeah,
would be 350
350, okay.
a year. Per person, per lot.
Yeah.
Those would be existing lots. What we didn't account for was expansion, adding another 3,000 residents, which is about 1,200 dwelling units.
Sure, so that would bring it down even further.
And I'll just share that. And you can take it for what it's worth, but, and I have been talking to our housing administrator, because she'd be the one that issues the request for proposal. As developers seek to build out housing in these areas. In our budget hearing recently, and I appreciate the testimony in that space, you know, what's proposed in the capital budget. Is just this infrastructure, so fully building out a road on the Mauka loop, the mini loop as it's called in the budget. And I've had conversations with her that she'd be more keen to build this as a proper road rather than this as a proper road. So there's still some ongoing dialogue about what that means and adjusting and getting from end to end of the county property and having a proper road within the county property. So that at least gets it to that point, and then we start figuring out the other pieces. So there are some piecemeal things going there. She is very hesitant about, from conversations with you and community members like yourselves, about adding housing capacity in this area. So the mayor may take a different approach, but the housing administrator is definitely concerned about adding capacity at the deep end and the north end of the village. So take it for what you want. Sorry. Why? Just adding more residents, impacts to the roads without any proper infrastructure on the north end of the village. So that's what her hope and goal is. to have more infrastructure to support a growing community.
And I've heard that come out of her mouth
Yep.
directly in a meeting the two of us had with her,
Yep.
right? And I delivered those warnings very, very unambiguously to
Yep.
her. And I do hear her concern, but concern doesn't mean that that's not going off the budget or that this is actually changing. How do we validate that these issues are actually going to be addressed?
Hmm.
Like, we're all concerned,
Yeah,
right? But she's got a boss and the boss is telling us,
yeah,
go away.
yeah. And that's where, when those proposals go through and we see, you know, transfer of funds for projects, that's when it goes through the council process, and that's where some of those questions can be raised or voted up or down to approve those sort of things and those changes and those allocation of resources for the loop road, or no, we need to do it differently. So it has that, there's still that check to it.
Right, well, I guess what I was saying is that the second budget, does it still have $11 million for the loop road in it? Is it labeled that way?
Yep.
So if you all approve that budget and the mayor signs it, isn't that then telling housing, go forth and spend this $11 million on the loop road? Won't they have to come in and ask to change it? And won't that have to require some proactive elements from them?
To a certain extent, I mean, there is some flexibility within the capital budget about those particular projects, because they're not all encumbered funds either, like the dollars have not been allocated to that particular project. So there's still some opportunities, and there are, like, even the Waikōloa Evacuation Center, like, there's some issues that need to be changed there. So there's still, these are kind of like benchmarks and goals that don't necessarily carry the weight. Even the $2.5 million that I put in on behalf of the community here, there's still, the administration has to carry it out, and then it has to be vetted through the council process too for some of those changes.
And James, that's part of the problem, because, and if you can help us with this center, it will be wonderful. Because it's very clear that the mayor is not interested in any of this. He won't spend a single dollar or make a single commitment to addressing either the emergency egress or the permanent road. It's always somebody else's problems, and he tries to make it Ed's problems, doing his best. We love what he's trying to do for us. But he tries to fix his problem, he tries to make it a developer's problem, but he doesn't want to make it his problem.
Right. And I hear you on that, David. I mean, it's unfortunate to hear that, you know, he's pushing it off and having the state take on as their primary responsibility. The state has stepped in to do it. I mean, the last administration did a groundbreaking, but I don't think all the pieces were together even then too. And then now we have the state kind of, oh, we were there, we're a partner in this, we're gonna take it on. So I do have concerns about that too, for sure. I hear you on that. And
Well, James, if the housing department say they would rather spend the money to complete the county road down to the private property line. Why can't you put that in the budget instead of calling it putting it?
I'm happy to revisit. I had that conversation with Administrator Costa, so happy to, I told her I want to change this. I want to change how it's worded in there. I want it so that it aligns with what you're telling me, like what you're saying.
Yes.
That it
Yes.
aligns with what it says. So
Yes.
I can revisit that. I'm happy to make that kind of change and see what they say on that. Yeah.
Okay.
We appreciate that.
That might be a major step
Even if
forward.
Yeah,
if it
let me
like
throw with that.
cuts out like the loop language that
Yes.
it's
Yes.
specific to the property, right? But it has a caveat of, okay, it's not
Absolutely.
just one over the other.
That would get us halfway down the road. That would get us halfway down the hill.
Because that's what the office is telling me, so I can push them and saying, well, let's make this work for this area, what they're telling me.
Please. Yes.
Could you educate me, please?
Sure.
I'm sorry.
No, it's all right.
I don't understand why this conversation is focused on the county and focused road. You're talking about a community of 7,000 people, 10 years ago. 10 to 12,000 people. You're talking about building the second major arterial road out of that. To connect to a state highway. Why isn't this a state fund?
Oh.
Why are we focused? Why are we focused?
Can I-
Why isn't this a state issue? And Senator, you said yourself, I've worked in county government, I've represented county governments. I've worked with grant writers. Why hasn't this Department of Transportation, you said yourself, pretty good at finding money out of the.
So I can answer the question. Because what the agreements between the counties and the state would manage the main thoroughfares and maintain them. The counties would take the ancillary roads. That was the agreement struck 5-6 years ago. What happened was on this island in District 9, from James takes care of now, the road in North Mahalo, Hobby Town to Pololu Valley used to be a state highway. It's now a county. The road through Waimea Town used to be county. It is now state. The road from Honokaa Town to Pololu used to be state. Now it's county. We did this road swapping because the state would stand up and maintain the main thoroughfares. Building any new capacity, if it's not a main thoroughfare, then the state's not going to be dealing with that. That's why this is a county deal. Now, the Waikōloa Road from Queen Kahumanu to Mahalo Highway is a county road. It's not a state road. However, Ed and I've been friends a long time, and he's very good at finding
Yes, he is.
money.
That was great. That was 50 million there.
Yeah.
That was good.
Ed found me 50 million. He said, you gotta bring me a 5 or a 10% match. If you bring me 5 million, I'll bring you 50. That's how we resurfaced this road. But again, it's a county road, but the state is able to find those funds. So the county stands that stuff up, and the state will help participate in some of the maintenance. So we get this road built. I'm confident the state's going to be jumping in with STIP funds going forward. But the construction is private because that's what the entitlements, when I don't know the details, 75% is built out, then the developer steps in to build it. But we're not at 75% build out or whatever the number is.
276 houses, and it's 276 houses, and it's an option,
Yeah.
right? They don't even have to do it.
So, and again, these are the entitlements that were agreed upon years ago. And I always tell people, study your history and what something was supposed to happen. And it may not be the exact same thing. I remember when Waikōloa was built. I was born here, I grew up here, and we as kids used to laugh, who would want to live there ever? Well, it turns out a lot of people. But it was going to be a smoker community, that's it. No families, strictly a smoker. Well, things changed. So as things change, we are responding and trying to stand up. It's easy to build this road, all it takes is money.
Yep.
That's the problem. And I usually, when people ask me, how much does it cost to build a highway, a federally dedicatable highway? I calculated 5 million a mile. That's what we normally.
Ed told us 8 million a mile on this island right now.
Well, and that's the updated numbers. That's what I was trying to figure this out. Just so I can sound intelligent. Like I said, I'll give you an answer. I'll make it.
To add a couple of things to that, the way that it's always been explained to me, the feds are responsible for connecting states or connecting military bases. The state is responsible for connecting cities, and then the county is responsible for getting cities internal drives like Paniolo or whatever, and then connecting to the state highway network. So this road would connect to the state highway network because the Queen K is a state highway. And so this would be a county road connecting to the state highway. The second important thing to recognize with this whole road thing is there is one contract in the entire world that recognizes the need for this. Well, there's two places where this road is recognized formally. One is in a contract with a private developer that is between the county and the developer, not the state. Between the county and the developer. They are the ones saying that they is written down and agreed to it. The second place this is adopted is in the 2008 CDP that is adopted by the county as an ordinance. So the county has said this is a priority in multiple places. And so it is the county's responsibility first and foremost. And we very much appreciate all of the work and help and support that the state has given to support that and get us to this point. But ultimately they are going out and beyond their limits right now. And we can't be relying on the good graces of the state director of transportation, right? Like that's wonderful. And I adore it, right? But like, that's not going to get us a full 2-lane road in a couple of years.
And I still had a question about that 2.5 million. We met with Jill Chikuda.
Yeah.
She was so curious. Well, how much money do you guys need? How can I help with federal dollars? We do not have a number until that 2.5 million that we worked on is spent.
Yeah.
And she just was dying with herself that the county hadn't spent this money. I mean, what can we do? It expires in 2 years, right? You said 3 years to appropriations.
Yeah, that would fall
Fall
off,
off.
then you could re-up it again, yeah.
So we only have 2 more budget years to use this 2.5
No,
million.
then Councilmember could reappropriate it back on the list, so it stays on until it's been used and until it's actually been encumbered with that project and the contractor's been hired, consultant's been hired. And yeah, I know David's laughing about it, because like, if the administration doesn't see it as a priority, they're not gonna do it. And so I can push, and I can have meetings with the mayor, I can have meetings with DPW on it, but if they don't take it on, then it's not gonna happen. Yeah.
And the mayor's tone, unfortunately, in the last 2 or 3 things we've seen of him talking about this road is super flippant all of a sudden. You know, you guys, you think you have problems, Puna has problems, and I really don't want to take the bait of pitting communities
Yeah.
against each other. You know, we all have
Yeah.
needs.
Yeah, sure.
Ours are more important than what's happening in Puna, our wastewater, blah, 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 but doesn't negate how important this is for us. And then even the mayor saying, this is technically your 3rd road, but he knows that's not what we're asking for. We're asking for a dedicated 2-lane road, but he's suddenly very confident to say this in his county address and, you know, on social. So I'd love to understand from you the change in tone from the mayor. And I mean, I'm genuinely concerned it's gonna take a major fire here for him to think about this differently, and also what can we do to push the 2.5 million?
Well, looking at the budget, I mean, that's why I want to push more to capital investments and capital projects, so that that's the mechanism that I can draw, so that we fund more of these other capital projects beyond the wastewater stuff. And that's the conversation that I can continue to have with the administration. You may not want to hear me on some of these things, because I've taken this voice of the community and these concerns to them. And what he's saying publicly is also saying to me too, on some of these things. So that's the challenge I'm also up against. I'm grateful that my colleagues on the dais supported my request last year for 5 million for widening Ponty. So take a step back. So I was trying to match what the developer was doing and who could be up at that first, right? And of course, the county government moves a lot slower, but that was my goal and my intent, that if we do the widening and extension of Ponty, or widening upon my interpretation, that would be an obligation of that developer. They have to do the other one. So mine was it was a game of chess I was playing. But of course, county moves a little bit slower, and county administration doesn't want to take on the 2.5. So that's still my concern, right? I still have these conversations with DPW, not so much with mayor, because it's a touchy situation. I mean, you see it on social media and how he presents it a little bit. So I'm trying to talk to his other administrators to kind of get that bubbling up a little bit more so with them. I mean, that's a conversation with Office of Housing. I have that conversation with DPW. Yeah, and I just keep pushing on it. So I mean, it's until we can really lock it in and get that department to say, we're gonna encumber these dollars and we're actually gonna do it and go out to bid on an engineering project. Yeah.
Well, what about the amendment that we
Just to
suggested?
tie it through the CB,
Oh, yeah.
these requirements
Are you
through
doing
the
a petition?
CB.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, yeah, that's the next line on this whole thing,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. That we talked.
Yeah, I was talking about the petition and the amendment and our testimony and everything. Yeah, so I don't know if you all were aware of this. We have been circulating a petition, basically saying don't spend money on new housing until this $2.5 million is spent, and start working on the road. And we're up to what, 210 signatures at this point in time, and it'll be ready to support any amendment that is ever.
Good, 8,000 people here.
Well,
We're doing our
we were
best.
really proud of 210, to be clear in that.
Well, last year we decided to get it.
Yeah, I know, but like, it's only us, right?
What?
Yeah, we need that. Yes.
Yes.
And has lawyers to help us just take rocks and build it on.
Well, there's that part, sure.
Money from property taxes and tell them. If do it back.
I'll give you another number that to update the group on the Waikōloa evacuation traffic study.
Oh, yes, I was gonna ask about that too.
So that received just shy of 500 submissions. So that's where they are, but it is a substantial sample that they were looking for.
And they were excited about that. They tried to shut it down early because they got enough,
And they got just under 500.
yeah.
And their timeline is September to have out the results and analysis. They are also hoping to do another in-person meeting for further discussion about it. So
Have they, have you heard any updates from them? I emailed them personally at the middle of January, right after the meeting, requesting fairly formally that they add a model, including a second road within it. And that by not doing it, they were likely violating some things. And I never heard back from them.
I think they're changing some conditions to add other parameters on there.
Okay.
I don't know what they look like. I mean,
Yeah.
I just heard from civil defense about September kind of timeline, the number of signatures or submissions. And then there are changing some parameters in there to have another community meeting and provide some other analysis points in there. So I don't know what those other issue parameters are.
But for the capital budget, James, would you be willing to basically put forth an amendment saying not to move forward on any building of the common community workforce housing until we have spent this money for the 2.5 million for the designing and planning of the road and basically tying the building of that community to advancing the permanent second road project forward? That's basically what we're asking.
Well, we're gonna answer that, Fred. I don't think he has that authority. Don't try to shove
I
that on
think
him.
it's too much, I'm putting too much power on him.
Well, in the budget, there's no stipulation like that in the
I see.
budget process.
And so, though I don't disagree with the sentiment of it,
Well, what mechanism could?
Yeah, where can we put that in
could we
then?
use to try to ask for that?
Why can't you enact the terms for women
because
appropriations?
that's not his function. That's a planning function. So, and he represents.
Why isn't that a budget?
The county budget doesn't work that. You cannot put conditional expenditures as a council. That comes from,
And zoning ordinances and
yeah,
development plans.
Such an
Subdivisions.
could be conditioned or vote,
No, it's either up or down.
Yeah,
vote on the budget.
and it's an up or down. I either support it, if you put this in, I support.
Yeah, I don't think you guys are voting down the full budget on this.
You have to pull out something. You can't, we either can amend things in and out of the budget, or we cannot put conditions on things that are in the budget. Like conditions on those things, so it's either up or down at the end of the day on the budget.
So let's get creative, guys. How do we do this?
I will think on that. I had nothing to do with this because I'm actually his constituent.
No, this is perfect. Yeah, you're here pushing him too, and you've got experience.
Well,
I'm listening to the concerns and I don't disagree. And I think one way to put forth is just have a district improvement project.
Yeah.
And that's something James could author for next year. This isn't gonna happen, government doesn't happen.
Right, but what can we do about this 2.5 million right now and the new housing that's coming in right now? I get that, and that's absolutely, we are patient and we understand that, like, just well, no, well, I'm not, we're patient at the terms of government. We understand that it takes a long time, but we want to know what we can do to get the ball moving now and not waiting.
So who appropriated just the funds from July?
That I operated last fiscal year, 2.5 for planning design.
The amendment got supported 8-1 at council. They were really supportive of it. Even Matt was like, I like what you're doing, I just don't like the process.
Public Works.
Yeah. And that's probably the Shane West and and then what's I think on the top of the mind for Public Works is the WER at the moment, and this has been kind of a priority for them. Because I know that Neil, Deputy Director Azevedo, he wants to take on the maintenance. I mean, there's no question about that. As soon as all the work is done, he's ready to be out there maintaining it, paving, do whatever he needs to do for the surface treatment, all that kind of stuff. So he's eager for it. And that's just been kind of at the forefront of the mind. So I am interested to see how this goes forward and then be able to act accordingly as that unfolds, so.
James, you mentioned a couple of people you work with.
Yeah.
Who obviously have different views of.
Yeah.
How this.
Yeah, all of the problems, yeah,
Right.
supposed to.
At the end of the day.
Yeah.
They work for the maker.
Yes, they do,
Yeah.
yeah.
So the idea that, you know, obviously you can make different decisions and say, no, we're gonna focus on this. Where the county will take
Sure.
responsibility. I'm just saying, guys, this is. The problem has become obvious. To where the government's holding themselves. And I don't know if I saw it. Now, if you guys are, you gentlemen are working inside the halls of governmental power and influence. Okay, and we would certainly appreciate it if you could expend a little of that. So I'm trying to get the mayor out, right?
Yeah.
Well, there may be another way to do that. And we talked about expending the money, and so James, let me concentrate on that a little bit. I know the mayor is hesitant to take on anything.
Yeah.
We have something as simple as the old postcard road at Kohala. And sniff it all, bring it up to snuff, but the county says we don't want it.
It's gonna give you some insight to it.
Somehow the mayor found $20 million to restore the connection to the public eye.
Oh.
It's a priorities thing. It's a priorities thing.
Yeah, no, and it's a priorities thing for administration, and different communities have different priorities. And so that's what.
That's wisely said, it's not one community.
No, I know.
But it is kind of a sense of way your priorities.
Yep.
I mean,
And I don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go.
yes.
Yeah, so I don't wanna just walk out on that.
I appreciate it. Well, thank you for coming. Is there anyone have any questions for Senator Richards? Yes.
Possibility of possible evacuation. Yeah, like,
Yeah, so the Waikōloa Gymnasium,
no, yeah.
multi-purpose facility. I mean, that's where we have county land, so that would be the most like cost-effective place for it, like. We're not having to buy other property, we put it on county property that we already own.
So all I'm saying is that beautiful facilities coming from the library with an early
Yep.
learning center, that's
Yep.
kids is gonna go.
Yep.
I live back home in New Park and the number of kids have multiplied.
Oh, yeah.
Tremendously down there.
Oh.
So it's just, we're starting to become what we're dreaming of.
Sure.
Libraries and gymnasiums, but yeah, this is where we don't have the foundation.
Yeah, and I understand that, and. I know there's also a request for the gymnasium in the community, so also trying to meet that need and make that request move forward and stay in the budget. But trying to match those other needs is important too, so it's all these different pieces, and the states really come to the table with the library and that function and the long request for the community as well. So trying to tackle all these things at the same time. Yeah.
We're getting what we
Yeah,
want.
thank you.
And I saw one more.
Yes.
Back here.
Question, but as I asked earlier, what do you think the members, like, shift in attitude is? Is it just primarily? Or is he had something else up his sleeve?
No, I think it's definitely a money thing. I mean, like I shared with you the chart on the wastewater investment, there's that. And I can't speak for him, but he's trying to do projects all around the island, and we worked on the administration worked on the intersection here. They've done different things, so he's trying to touch base with all the different communities. And maybe this is too much for him. I don't know the answer to it, and I will just keep pushing with him. I'm happy to push on behalf of the community to kind of see this through, because while the WER is a significant movement, right, in terms of recognizing that we have an evacuation need, an emergency, it still doesn't address this other question about growing population, right?
Do you know which landowner was the last one to come to the table?
Probably the county.
The county is not one of the landowners.
No, I'm not sure actually. Yeah, I don't know that.
James, the other funny thing that we're all saying is we love our lights out there.
Yeah.
Just reappropriate the
roundabout.
Yeah,
It's gonna be all over.
and that's, so the roundabout, that conversation has been, that administration's kind of put a pin in that, so I wouldn't worry about that right now. I know Senator and I have been supportive of the roundabout for other reasons, for growth of the community. There's other benefits that a roundabout provides, especially a 2-lane roundabout, especially in emergency situations where you have no lights, whatever. So there's other questions about that, but the intersection is, we have it. And I know the community's enjoying it. I am working with Deputy Director Azevedo and DPW to add in right turn lanes coming up and downhill. So that's an ongoing conversation to add more capacity at the intersection. So that's an ongoing conversation. We only have one striking for Mahalo, so that's a problem.
Senator Richards, before you get out of here, one thing I wanted to flag for you that's a sort of pie in the sky idea, but a way to get the state back to the table on this whole connectivity issue is continuing Paniolo from Waikōloa up to Kauai would be connecting two communities, and it would be a parallel between K, and it would sure cost, it would cost 9+ figures. I'm not unaware of that, but it would be a way to get the state to the table, I think, potentially, and also maybe the Fed.
It's part of a grandiose master plan. And before that road would go through, the bypass road of Waimea is probably a higher priority on that. Now, to show you how quick government is, I remember the first time I heard about the road, the bypass road of Waimea, I was 3rd grade. They said, just wait, I'm waiting. But I actually have an idea on that, but again, it comes back to funding. And just before I leave, you're looking at the county budget approaching $1 billion, the state budget's $20 billion. And about 10 billion come from our tax structure here and 10 billion are grant from feds, etc. The federal cuts have taken about 3 billion of that out of our budget, and that's where we are struggling to get things handled. We have been able to address by some creative financing, like I mentioned up there early on. We have about 2 billion of that addressed right now, but we're still $1 billion down. And so we're trying to figure out how to make that work. You talk about the 220B. We have a way of dealing with that impartial with the funding that came through the OHA side of the industry previously. But I said we still have a glaring hole with what we're working on, and we're trying to get that addressed.
What is 222B?
It's an early childhood education program. Yeah, 220.
I thought it was
Under-
2.
Oh, yeah,
2 and me. Yeah.
Under Partners in Development, so they do a lot of childhood education programs. Yeah, and that one's like 220 is actually a physical space where you can drop your kids off and those sort of things.
And since you mentioned the future education in Waikōloa, we're going to build a high school. That's the big question. I've asked DOE to sooner rather than later look at this. Is if they build a high school here, what happens to one class? Kalaka'i doesn't matter because the population is big enough, but that is a concern of how it goes. Hoi has a charter school, so it's not just this community, it's an impact of everything else. But I've asked for a review and assessment of that so we can start planning for where it's going.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it, sir.
Oh, thank you for the invitation. Gotta spend a little time with my twins.
Yeah, go.
Senator, no high school unless there's.
I can work on it. I don't disagree. But look at the big master plan, it's actually pretty well thought out as far as the road structure.
Getting to its priorities.
Yeah.
It's all money.
Yeah, and we all have big checkbooks, we all look like a hero.
Yes.
Yeah, but that paper plan has been on the books for 18 years, the money is not turning up.
Yeah, it's actually in county, you have your county roads, your state roads, your private roads, and your paper roads. So really, that's an actual county.
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks everyone.
Thank you for coming.
We appreciate
You're
it.
gonna be.
I guess a little bit, yeah, I wanted to share one more thing. I'm
Not
happy.
everybody.
Thank you, Senator. I think Matt, you had another question on, I want to share this with the group at some point, but the South Wahala flood study
Mhm.
was finalized as well. So I do have a copy of that. It's a large file, happy to share with the group
Mhm.
and find an appropriate repository to kind of keep it. Substantial impacts to the community reveals, so, yeah, and
Substantial at reveals, they said.
yeah, just in terms of. Other investments that need to be made in the community that's already been, that has, the floods with. These major riparian zones that kind of come down through Waikōloa Village. And it's, as you already experienced firsthand, it's revealing kind of in a documentation study. About what needs to be done to improve, flood mitigation and control for the community, so, yeah. I just got it the other day, so I need to kind of dive into it a little bit more. I'll share it with you, Matt, so you can kind of look at it a little bit more.
Yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to look at it, please.
Yep.
Okay. I'm doing that. Well, yeah, so the June meeting, before we talk about fun stuff, the June meeting, Aslan and I are going to be out of town. So it is either going to have to be virtual, or if someone is willing to put their hands up and set up a laptop here in the room. I'm looking at two people.
I'm also.
Oh, you are? Okay. So maybe we should just plan on doing that virtually, and we might change the time a little bit. I don't know. I do not want to cancel the meeting. I do not want to cancel the meeting. So, okay, so we'll plan on probably making that virtual unless someone emails us and says it's gonna be in person. We'll send out emails. Okay, so the last sort of fun thing, the budget and general plan testimony, I think we covered that fairly well with everyone. We've been talking a little bit about this multispectral drone video thing that we're working on, and I am actively working on a grant application right now in conjunction with University of California, San Diego, Georgia Tech, and the U.S. Forest Service over in Hilo to bring a really high-end drone to the area and get a really, really, really high-end scan of everything. And we did do a test of it in Oregon a few months ago. Out of this whole thing, we ended up signing a deal, a service agreement with the Ohio Supercomputer Center to process everything. And we have been doing a very high level thing. And I then tested it on some of the drone videos I have been taking locally, and we can make 3D models of the village. So this is the
Not looking at your houses, we're looking at the topography.
Yeah, we're looking at the topography. So you can zoom out and you can see it's really crappy around the edges, but it's really, really, really good and dense in the middle. And what we're going to be able to do is we're going to be able to take this and we're going to be able to animate it. We're going to be able to simulate what a fire looks like on these areas. We also, it's in my backpack over there. I can show you later. We can 3D print these. So we can have little models of the interior lots and whatnot out there for demonstration purposes. So this was a fun little test that I did literally just a few days ago. I went out and filmed the interior lots again last week, and I was like, can I take one of the videos and make a 3D model? And the answer is yes, we can. So that is a thing that is going on now in the world, and I just thought it was kind of cool to share with you guys that we're not only sitting here and poking the government, we're also trying to do some real research and trying to really partner with some actual academics. So sure. So anyways, if anyone has any questions, that's what's going on. Yeah.
So you don't take a next or post out and it's just
Thus far. And hopefully the one we bring will be pretty fancy and quite large and do quite good. Where is this thing? I don't know where it went. Oh, it's in front of my laptop. My goodness. Okay. This is a model of the thing I printed out. So if you guys want to play with it, by all means,
be able to be put into parameters about wind, fire, and just
the vegetation, the dryness.
mainly the topography to understand how a fire might behave in space, with and without natural fuels, grass, so whether it's maintained or not. Yeah.
So yeah.
Right. Awesome.
That's what's been going on. Does anyone have any questions, anything to share? Yes, sir.
So you all know that we lost our fire chief, right? Because Wotan passed away earlier this year, and the fire commission is a volunteer board at the county level with 9 community members, each representing the 9 districts. And at some point, they're gonna start the process of hiring and selecting a new fire chief. So I would encourage this community, this organization, to also watch that unfold and weigh in as you see the applicants present themselves. And have an opportunity to testify on that, especially as residents in this area to kind of have key insight into the challenges and dangers we have here, so.
Volpe is one of the key.
So Daniel Volpe, our temporary fire chief, is one of the candidates. And so you can always testify for ones you support or things you're looking for in a fire chief, those sort of things. But this is someone that's gonna help guide administratively the goals and the vision of the department. So it's, you want an opportunity to weigh in on it, I encourage you to.
What is this?
Waiting to see what they're just receiving applications, kind of going through that process right now. So I'm not sure when they're gonna start doing, but it may be good to track that particular fire commission and see what their agendas are looking like in the coming months.
Do you know how many other candidates there are?
I
Or
don't know, sorry. I don't know.
But Volpe was here in the community 4 weeks ago, do a top story. And I went and asked him whether or not he would support the statement that his predecessor, Chief Todd, gave us last night. When the chief said, we cannot stop fires that are being driven by red flag lanes. The only way the community can save lives is to be able to evacuate. So Todd was very clear with us that we needed to get the road in place to be able to get out of here for save lives. So I explained that to Volpe in front of the folks who were in attendance. I said, we would like you to repeat that message for the mayor, would you do that? And he obviously got very nervous. He didn't commit that he would say that. He said he would look into it. But I could tell that he was very nervous because he is a candidate and the mayor has to appoint him.
No, the commission hires him.
The commission hires.
Yeah, just like the police chief,
Okay.
the mayor is not his boss.
Oh,
They have to work together.
yes.
The budget comes from the mayor, so there's this overlap in that responsibility, but the fire chief and the police chief are hired by the commissions, the volunteer citizen commissions.
Well, I sent him a follow-up email. I thank him for coming and talking to us and reminded him of the request that we made. And the message I got back was that he would look into it and he'd get back to us. He hasn't gotten back to us yet, so that is a piece of information that I want to raise again. As this process unfolds.
Chief Ope, well, acting Chief Ope, he came, what was it, 2 years ago to that one talk story at the 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago at the school?
That wasn't him.
That wasn't him? I thought that was him.
Volpe.
Oh,
It was someone who now works for HWMO.
oh, that's right.
It's
Yeah, much bigger guy over.
That's right. Okay, never mind.
He works actually, just like this is, Eric Moore.
Okay.
Yeah, so he actually has experience with PTA because he was a firefighter with PTA. And then he did transition to the county for a short while, and now he works with HWMO.
Yeah.
So Eric Moore, deputies.
WMO?
Hawaii Wildfire Management Organization. I'm sorry.
PTA.
Yeah,
PTA is, sorry, that Waikōloa training area.
well,
Yeah.
There was still one before that.
So he worked for he worked for the fire apparatus within the Waikōloa training area. And then he transitioned to the county with the Hawaii County Fire Department for a couple of years. And then he retired officially and now works with Hawaii Wildfire Management Organization as a consultant and employee.
what I was gonna say, I was gonna put words in the wrong person's mouth, but what he said that day still sticks with me. He said that red flag days, that's a good day to go to Costco or go to the beach, which really was implying the best thing for you is to already be out of the community on those days, which doesn't work at night and it doesn't work on school days and doesn't work on a lot of days, but like that's just a thing that he did say. So yeah.
In one of the one of those last kind of sincere conversations and like meeting conversation I had with our late fire chief Todd was about the Mauka areas of Waikōloa Village, and he was talking about controlled burns to reduce fuel load. I mean, you have the goat grazers here in the village too. You have other opportunities, and I still encourage the community in capacity to help create that buffer at the top end of the village, whatever that looks like. It could be a combination of things, right? It could be the proper management rotation of animals. It could be controlled burns on appropriate times, of course. And then also, or a reactivation of some of the agricultural, or creating a green break, fuel breaks to that capacity with proper investment of water resources running through the area. So that's still something I want to encourage the community to consider in reactivating some of those spaces and creating a barrier for the community, whatever that looks like.
We want to, we gotta get money, we gotta figure out where to put them first. That's why we gotta get the drone here to figure out where they gotta go to be able to get the money to put them in place. Yeah. We're working on it.
Water laden plants, I mean, you have your flower plants, you have your bananas, I mean, there's. Your mind can run wild on what can be possible as an economic generator for the community. I don't know. You have a couple board members in the room too, so.
I was just gonna say, one thing to that is that the board, as James said, we are engaged with grazers. And there is a goat grazer that, does grazing out in the middle. We actually took a tour of that, a couple months ago now. I was surprised at how controlled and limited the area is in growth. You come down Waikōloa Road on both sides, you see the tall mountain grasses everywhere. That is by the road, and it is into the outer lands, mountain. The lands going a mile north of the village. That probably some, drone video of that. Has been, there, it's not as, the issue comes up that their fencing is not complete. And so that's a concern because folks have to get out. And so there's an issue of getting additional fencing, which is costs money, which is the association. So there's discussions about that, but it is in much better shape than it appears if you just go and assume that everything about the village looks like what you see when you drive up Waikōloa Road, and it doesn't. It doesn't mean that it's barren ground, that we don't have it. One of our board members, Dan Richards, is a volunteer firefighter with Bravo Company.
Yep.
And as a firefighter, he's looking at saying, this is what we see. When he's standing on the power line road north of Malcolm Village, saying they can sort of hold the line there as it comes down, things will burn, but it's, doesn't mean that when there's 50-mile-an-hour winds, moving the flames, that doesn't, skip over that. But I'm just saying to the extent that the villages is engaged with that, Hasling's continue as a member of the board. And so that's something that they're aware of. Relationships with the grazers and extending it, central fencing, possibly, that's all being done to try to mitigate that. And there is work being done. It's not complete, it's not perfect, but it's not terrible. At least in my opinion, not terrible. But I just, as a layperson looking at it, I was favorably impressed based on what I was thinking before.
Okay, well, we went a little over time. We really appreciate everybody.
We really appreciate you coming today, James, and sharing everything. And Senator Richards, when he was here, that was great. So yes, thank you. Yes, it was a surprise. So thank you, and we will see you all next time.
Thank you.